Well, good morning. Daniel 1 verse 3 reads, "Then the king commanded Ashpenaz, his chief eunuch, to bring some of the people of Israel, both of the royal family and of the nobility, youths without blemish, of great appearance and skillful in all wisdom, endowed with knowledge, understanding, learning, and competent to stand in the king's palace, and to teach them the literature and the language of the Chaldeans." The king assigned them a daily portion of the food that the king ate and of the wine that he drank. And they were to be educated for 3 years, and at the end of that time they were to stand before the king. Now, back in 2 Kings 20, the prophet Isaiah had prophesied that Yahweh would judge Israel, exiling them at the hands of the Babylonians. Daniel and his friends now found themselves in the midst of this judgment. And young Daniel's future suddenly seems to be in the hands of men who will decide what he will eat and drink each day, how he will spend his time, where he will live, and the seasons of his life. Ashpenaz and the Babylonians would choose what he would read and study from day to day, and most of that material would be heavily influenced by the idolatry and the philosophies of Chaldean culture. Talk about being out of your comfort zone. We may feel like we're not in control of our lives in many different ways. Who will I marry? Will I get that job? How will this circumstance or situation in my life work out? Maybe you're struggling with a sense of isolation that you're experiencing from being locked down during this pandemic, unable to connect in a meaningful way with your community. Maybe there's temptation to give in to depression and giving up. Maybe you fear for your job and your income, your business in this season. You're not quite sure how you will survive the weeks that are to come. In seasons where it seems like we have lost control in our lives, we have an opportunity to turn to God and recognize that we never really had control over our lives in the first place. Only He is sovereign over all things. And Daniel would likely have known about Isaiah's prophecy. And that same prophecy would have brought him strength and hope in this season. For though the Babylonians were his captors, it was Yahweh who reigned supreme over all the events in which he was caught up. Somewhere in this process, Daniel made a decision to trust Yahweh with his future. Sometimes that meant standing against those he was serving, even at the possible cost of his life. And sometimes it meant making the best of his situation, applying himself as best he could. God has shown us that He's worthy of our trust. Though He is in absolute control, able to judge even the nations, He has chosen to enter humanity, to pay the penalty for our sin by dying in our place, to welcome us into a new, loving relationship with Him through Jesus. If God would demonstrate His love for you in this way, do you think He's worthy of your trust? Have you ever decided to trust Him? Do you find you're tempted to try to wrestle control for your life from His hands? The famous evangelist Billy Graham tells the story of how, as a young student, he was struggling with whether to believe that the Bible was God's authoritative word for his life. One night he went into a field alone, knelt down, and placed his Bible on a stump in front of him. There in that field, he made the decision to trust God, and specifically the Bible as God's word. Billy's message has rung out to millions over these past decades. Every word he has spoken since that night has rested on that decision to trust God. How about you? Will you trust God like Daniel did, like Billy did? Will you make that choice, that decision? Take some time to ponder what this may mean for you today, and then to pray about it. Thank you so much for joining me, and I look forward to seeing you tomorrow morning.